Information about the case was carefully kept secret, which made the whole thing even more mysterious. Join us as we learn more about Tony and Mike's trip, what they did to get into this situation, whether they were breaking the law or whether there was a more complicated chain of events that brought them down. Tony Beets was born in the Netherlands in 1959 in the small town of Wijdenis. His only things with him were hope and a few dollars when he moved to Canada in 1980 when he was 21 years old. To make ends meet, he got a job on a dairy farm in Alberta, where he first lived. Tony was used to working hard, even though life was hard. That being said, it didn't take him long to figure out that gardening wasn't the best way to make money. He changed his attention to mining because he was interested in stories of wealth and had a strong work ethic. Many people would have given up on the Klondike region in Yukon Territory because of its harsh temperature and remote wilderness, but Tony didn't. He didn't see problems, just chances. Tony Beets did more than just dig for gold in the Yukon. He made a name for himself. He rose to fame in the world of gold digging in spite of the rough terrain and harsh weather. Because he didn't give up, he not only struck gold, but he also found his true love. It wasn't just a job to mine, it turned into a way of life for him and made him one of the most famous and successful people in the business. Tony Beets did well in more places than just the Yukon. From the ground up, he built a huge gold mine business. Tony started out with almost nothing and built a small mining business into a family business that became one of the most famous in the Klondike. Starting from the start, his wife Minnie Beets was very important. She kept the business side of things running smoothly, while Tony worked on operations in the field. The Beets children, Kelvin, Monica, and Mike, began working for their dad as the business grew. In fact, instead of going after other jobs, they joined the family business and learned how to run huge multi-million-dollar pieces of machinery. They learned the trade the hard way by doing it themselves, often in bad weather and other harsh situations. With Tony's help, Tony became famous very quickly for his crazy personality and deep knowledge of mines. He also worked very hard and didn't take no for an answer. His unusual ways of doing things, short temper, and famously bad language made him stand out from other workers. He was known for telling his team, including his family, what to do and pushing them to their limits. His famous catchphrase, "Shut the fuck up and keep mining," was often used to break up the action. People who watched the hit reality show Gold Rush really liked how honest Tony was, and he became a fan favorite. People admired how he wouldn't sugarcoat the truth and how determined he was to win despite all the odds. Tony Beets was already a pro when he joined Gold Rush in Season 2. With decades of skill, he was already a miner. Tony had been a miner for a long time and knew a lot about the job that many of the other miners didn't. Many of Tony's competitors had a hard time finding gold in the harsh Klondike conditions, but his business always did better than the others, bringing in huge amounts of gold year after year. Because he was experienced and planned his digging, he did well where others failed. By the 5th season, Tony had made a big move that made him one of the most driven miners in the Klondike. He paid a huge $1 million, 0 cents, for the famous dredge at Eureka Creek. A huge risk was taken. A lot of people who didn't like it thought it would end badly, but Tony saw opportunity where other people saw danger. He spent a lot of time and money fixing up the famous dredge, which was a huge old piece of mining equipment. Tony proved his doubters wrong by making it profitable even though the odds were against him. The dredge became a successful business that helped Tony build his empire. As the gold rush grew, producers quickly learned that Tony Beets and his family were a big part of why people liked the show. Along with Tony's larger-than-life attitude, the drama in the Beets family became a big part of the show's success. People often called the Beets family the Vikings of the Klondike. They brought a special energy to the show, and fans found their stories to be some of the most interesting. It wasn't just about gold. It was about how strong the Beets family was, how their relationships were always changing, and how they never gave up on their goal of success. Tony found something even more important in the Yukon wilderness than gold, a way to show how honest and determined he was. Through hard work, smart risk-taking, and a bit of grit, he was able to show that even the most unusual ideas could become successful businesses. There was no promise of success in the Klondike, but for Tony Beets it was the reward for years of hard work and determination. The Beets family built a mining business over the years, and people watched as it grew on TV. As people watched, they saw the family's control over the gold mine business grow as they staked more claims and expanded their operations. Tony Beets was at the center of this rise, a veteran miner who was known for being a tough boss in both the field and on screens. His son Mike Beets worked right next to him. Mike started working in the mines when he was very young and quickly became his father's valued assistant. He learned everything there was to know about the business, from how to operate heavy equipment to how to manage the logistics of a crew. He had a strong work ethic and was naturally a leader. It looked like Mike would eventually take over the family business Paradise Hill and carry on the work that Tony had started, but there was some strain in their relationship as father and son. Even though they were close, the stresses of the mining business often put it to the test. It was usual for people to get into heated arguments and shouting matches, especially when mining conditions were bad. Even though they had disagreements, they respected each other. Tony and Mike slowly gave Mike more responsibility so that he could finally run the Beets mining business on his own. But things got darker behind the scenes. In 2019, federal inspectors started looking into the Beets family business after complaints about environmental violations, especially wrong ways of getting rid of wastewater. Normal checks quickly turned into a bigger study from what it started as. Authorities are said to have found problems with the company's records, such as strange inconsistencies in how gold output was reported. There were claims that when Tony's family passed the power from Tony to Mike, more than just mining information was passed along. Investigators said that illegal activities may have been a part of the business for decades. Combining illegal activities with mining efforts that are otherwise legal, it became clear as the probe went on that the family's rise to power in the mining industry may have been accompanied by illegal activities that had become deeply ingrained in the day-to-day running of the business over many years. Adding a dark tone to the story, the Beets company was full of legal and criminal problems, overshadowing what at first glance seemed to be a simple story about a family's success in the mining business. Court papers say that the investigation into the Beets family's mining business got a lot worse when former workers came forward with shocking claims about illegal mining practices and large-scale tax evasion. An inspector for mines named John Reeves gave one of the most important testimony, who said that samples of the environment taken from the tailings ponds on the Beets lands contain dangerous chemicals like cyanide and mercury. These chemicals are not allowed at all in modern gold mining because they are very bad for health and the environment. For example, they can pollute groundwater and hurt ecosystems for a long time. Based on what Reeves said, it seems that these poisons were used on purpose to increase the rate of gold recovery. Even more so early in the morning when TV teams were not there and were not working. Prosecutors said that these illegal activities were hidden on purpose to keep up a good public image and make as much money as possible. The most damning proof came from Brian Anderson, who used to work as a mechanic for the Beets family for 8 seasons. Anderson helped the police and gave them video from a hidden camera that showed Tony and Mike Beets talking with buyers from Venezuela about gold deals that were never reported to the tax authorities. Prosecutors say that this video showed that there was a well-organized money laundering scheme. To avoid taxes and foreign scrutiny, the plan called for selling gold without recording it on the books. The prosecution brought in financial experts who said that between 2012 and 2012, when the Beets family was at the height of their fame from the Discovery Channel show Gold Rush, more than $15 million, 0 cents in gold sales were not recorded. A second set of financial records that were hidden in Tony Beets' office were found after more research. Reports say that these papers showed the real gold recovery numbers, who were much richer than what they said on the TV show or on their tax returns. Peter Lewis, a former crew member, said in court that a lot of what people saw on Gold Rush was a highly edited version of a much bigger, more secretive operation. This makes the claims more likely to be true. Lewis remembered that Tony told his team all the time, "What happens after the cameras leave stays between us," indicating that certain activities were hidden on purpose from both the film crew and the government bodies in charge. In a public court case, the Beets family's lawyers, led by famous defense lawyer Samantha Wright, fought hard against major charges of environmental crimes, tax evasion, and selling gold without a license. Wright said that the prosecution's witnesses were just angry ex-employees with personal grudges, implying that their statements were based more on anger than on truth. Fought hard to protect Tony Beets' image, showing him as a tough but honest businessman who had built a mining empire through decades of hard work and not by breaking the law. Wright told the court that this man had spent his whole life building a business. He made it clear that the public had been watching the Beets family for more than 10 years because they were famous from their roles on the TV show Gold Rush. Wright said that these people are TV stars, not crime masterminds. Why would someone do something wrong when there are national cameras rolling? On the other hand, authorities painted a very different picture, that the Beets' fame wasn't something that would stop them, but rather something that would help them. like a great smoke mask. It is said that the family took attention away from a much bigger and more secret mining business by showing a controlled and polished version of their operations on TV. Prosecutors said that while people watched staged mining as entertainment, the real business was making millions of dollars in hidden profits and damaging the environment in a way that could not be fixed. The jury heard from over a dozen witnesses for 6 weeks and came to the same conclusion: the defendant was guilty on all counts. The charges included planning to cheat on taxes, hurting the environment, and running a gold trade network without a license. When Judge Rebecca Holloway gave the sentences, it was clear that she would not be gentle with the people who were accused. She said that what they did was a huge breach of public trust and a direct danger to the environment of the Yukon. According to what the experts said, the illegal use of chemicals like mercury and arsenic had already polluted the groundwater in a way that could last for generations. Tony Beets stayed stubborn when he was given the chance to speak in court. Mike Beets seemed more emotional and calm. He told the judge that he had only done what his father told him to do. Judge Holloway said that was a convenient plea, but it didn't get him off the hook. Even experienced legal observers were shocked by the final verdict. Tony and Mike Beets will both spend the rest of their lives in jail. Legal experts said that this kind of term is very uncommon for financial crimes, but the prosecutors were able to prove that the severity of the damage to the environment called for the harshest punishment available. After the dramatic guilty verdicts and life terms for Tony and Mike Beets, Judge Rebecca Holloway made a harsh closing statement. Her words were heard all over the courtroom and beyond.